The van rolled slow along a Chicago side street as the woman walked alone, thinking about getting home and nothing else. A door slid open. Hands grabbed. The street swallowed the sound. By the time anyone might have looked up, the vehicle was already moving again, blending back into traffic like it belonged there. In the early 1980s, women began turning up dead in and around Chicago, and the pattern was hard to ignore. Victims disappeared suddenly, often from ordinary places and ordinary moments, and their bodies were later found dumped in isolated areas. The injuries were extreme and deliberate, meant to humiliate and terrorize as much as to kill. Detectives were forced to confront violence that was not opportunistic or impulsive. It was coordinated. At the center of the case were four men who knew each other well. Robin Gecht was older than the others and carried himself like a leader. Edward Spreitzer and the brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokoralis ran with him. They moved through the same neighborhoods and bars, shared money and drugs, and relied on a van that let them approach women quickly and disappear just as fast. On May 23, 1981, 28-year-old Linda Sutton was abducted. 10 days later, her body was discovered behind the moonlit motel. The crime was so severe it stayed with investigators, but there was not yet a clear series to link it to. Chicago had homicides every week. What detectives had not seen was the same kind of signature returning. Nearly a year passed before the next known abduction. On May 15, 1982, 21-year-old Lorraine Borowski disappeared as she was about to open the real estate office where she worked. She was last seen in the morning, and then she was simply gone. 5 months later, her body was found in a cemetery in Clarendon Hills. The location and the injuries suggested the same offenders as Sutton's case, but the evidence was still thin. 2 weeks later, on May 29th, 30-year-old Shui Mak vanished in Hanover Park. She had recently immigrated to the United States. That night, she argued with her brother in the car, and he left her on the side of the road. Alone and vulnerable, she was taken. Her body was not found for months. Then a victim survived. In June 1982, Angel York was abducted into a van. She was attacked and left alive. She made it to help and gave police a description of the men and the vehicle. Her account showed investigators something crucial. More than one person was involved. Even with that insight, the lead did not break the case open. The description did not immediately match a known crew, and the van could have been any number of vehicles on the road. Over the late summer of 1982, more bodies were found. On August 28th, Sandra Delaware was discovered near the Chicago River. On September 8th, Rose Davis was found in an alley. The manner of death and the mutilation were so similar that detectives believed the same offenders were escalating, growing bolder and more confident. Women began traveling in pairs, watching for vans that slowed near bus stops, and calling home the moment they arrived somewhere safe. In squad rooms, detectives pinned maps to the wall and marked each recovery site with a colored tack. Calls came in from terrified friends and relatives, reporting a daughter who missed work, a sister who never made it home, a roommate whose purse was still on the kitchen table. Patrol officers were told to watch for suspicious vans and to stop vehicles that matched witness descriptions. Tips poured in, most of them wrong, but everyone had to be checked because the next call might be the only one that mattered. On October 6, 1982, the violence widened. A local drug dealer, Rafael Tirado, was shot in a drive-by attack at a phone booth, and his friend, Alberto Rosario, survived. It was not the same type of crime as the others, but it placed the offenders in motion, armed and reckless. That same day, another woman, Beverly Washington, was last seen alive after being lured into a vehicle by an offer of money. Her body was found near railroad tracks. By then, fear in the city was no longer limited to one neighborhood. Detectives worked under pressure and with limited physical evidence. They canvassed where victims had last been seen, re-interviewed witnesses, and compared notes across suburbs and city divisions. They mapped dump sites and looked for routes that could connect them, hoping one reliable vehicle description or one identifiable suspect would finally hold. The offenders were mobile, the abductions were fast, and the violence was designed to erase identity. Police finally got a break by tracing details that pointed to Robin Gecht. Investigators connected a van associated with him to the October 6th attack on Washington. Gecht was arrested on October 20th, 1982, but the evidence was not yet enough to hold him. He posted bond and walked back out while detectives kept working. They dug into his movements, his associates, and the places he had been. As the investigation tightened, police rearrested Gecht on November 5th. Edward Spreitzer and the Kokoralis brothers were tracked down soon after. Andrew Kokoralis was arrested on November 7th. Thomas Kokoralis was arrested on November 12th. Interrogations produced confessions and accusations, but they also showed how complicated the truth could become when multiple offenders tried to protect themselves. Spreitzer and Andrew Kokoralis claimed involvement in far more killings than prosecutors could charge, while investigators focused on the murders they could prove in court. The group became known as the Ripper Crew, a name that captured the pattern of injury used to mark their crimes. The court record narrowed the case to what could be documented. Edward Spreitzer was convicted in connection with multiple murders, and later had his death sentence commuted to life. Andrew Kokoralis was convicted and executed by lethal injection in 1999. Thomas Kokoralis was convicted in the murder of Lorraine Borowski. His sentence was later commuted, and he was released decades later, a decision that reignited outrage among victims' families. Robin Gecht was convicted and sentenced to 120 years in prison. The full scope of the crew's violence has always been debated because confessions went beyond what could be proven, and some cases remained unsolved. What is not debated is the devastation left behind. Women were taken from streets and workplaces and never came home. Families searched for months before bodies were found. Survivors and witnesses carried memories of vans, hands, and sudden silence. For Chicago, the case left a permanent warning. Predators can function like a team, and a city can miss the pattern until the body count forces it into the open. Even after the arrests, the names of the victims remained, attached to dates, locations, and the last normal moments before everything changed. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.